How's everybody? Thanks for being here with us this morning.
3 of Ellen's 4 kids.
My name is Dan Yerger. I am the Public Policy Chair for the Longmont Chamber. Today we're going to have a wonderful forum with our two guests, Mr. Josh Goldberg and Tim Waters. Thank you for being here with us, gentlemen. We just want to take a couple minutes for everybody to introduce themselves. So, Bill, if you'd like to start us off.
I'm Bill Mitchell. I'm with Primerica, and I recruit and train people to get in the financial services business.
I'm Woodward Ogier. I'm filling in for Cindy Noble today. I am literally a couple of weeks into Longmont, or the area, so this is a good place to meet people. Here we go. Yeah, thank you.
I'm Amy Aschenbrenner. I'm the CEO of the Longmont Association of Realtors and a Chamber board member.
I'm Jennifer Paris, a State Farm Insurance agent and a financial services person, but you can't recruit me.
Wally Ranch and Ellen's Bed Bath and Be Gone.
My name is Monty Meduna. I'm with First National Bank.
Brian Baum, former mayor of the city of Longmont.
Good back here.
Elizabeth with Senator Cory Gardner's office.
We're the press.
The press. I'm Carol Schack with Green Extraditions. I'm a member of this committee. I'm a member of the committee. I used to be a member of the committee. I am Bonnie Finley. I work for the State Chamber of Commerce, and I'm on the Longmont City Council.
I'm Fran Follickhood with Pratt.
I'm Stacy Corday. I own Communication Concepts, and I'm on this committee.
I'm Nick McElhaney with Ergonomic Evolution, and I am also on this committee.
My name is Teresa McPhail. I am not on this committee, but my husband and I own Mac's Place Diner. We operate at 17th and Pace. We also operate the cafeteria at GE Oil and Gas here in town.
Yeah, I'm Tom Basil. I'm an employee benefits consultant in the area.
I'm Tim Waters.
I'm Josh Goldberg.
Just a couple of pieces of housekeeping before we open up our forum here. Upcoming events, Unity of the Community on February 22nd. Scott will be sending an email out to committee members asking for volunteers, particularly for being guides for elected officials, helping with greeting, name tags, all that fun stuff. If you're not aware, Unity in the Community is a 1,000+ attended event that the Chamber puts on every year to bring together government officials, nonprofits, and businesses. It's held over at Plaza Convention Center. I believe it's from 4 to 7 this year?
5 to 7:30.
5 to 7:30. As I said, strongly recommend everybody attend. It is free to the public and to chamber members, so we hope to see you there. Next month, our topic will be transportation. I understand we both have Councilwoman Joan Peck and then the RTD, thank you, Jeannie Lubau, coming to speak with us. We are also looking for 1 or 2 more folks to participate in that, so if you have somebody in mind who would like to recommend a guest speaker or somebody to come and speak on transportation here in Longmont, we'd love to have them. A couple of updates for committee business itself. Votes for the committee vice chair will be requested later today. I'll be sending an email out with the last couple of nominees. So hopefully we'll have a vice chair by our next meeting. With the Public Policy Task Force, did you want to speak on that briefly?
Sure. So we had a Public Policy Task Force that met earlier actually not this month, in January, to go over different general policy positions that we would like our chamber to have. So you will see on our whiteboard, if you can read my handwriting, those are what we came up with. The group will be meeting again to finalize these and also give some description about the different categories. So we have education, transportation and infrastructure, growth and development, energy and environment, taxes and regulation. So these will be general categories, issues that we will review in this committee, and that we will be working with the task force to, finalize them and add some description to them. So that's where we are at with that. If you would like to join that task force, just let me know. I'll add your name to that and invite you to the next meeting, which will be a little bit later this month.
Last item, Casey has asked us to take a look at House Bill 18-1001. There's a couple of handouts around the table, Scott, just regarding what that is. They're asking us to take a position against it. That said, we'd like members of the committee to take some time to do a little bit of research and send their comments into Scott. Just due to the short timeline and the fact we have something else going on today, we won't be having a committee meeting to discuss it, but the strike force will be taking a vote on it on Monday. So if you have some time to do some research on that and want to send in your comments or thoughts regarding whether or not the chamber should be getting involved in supporting that or opposing it, please feel free to do so. Do we have any questions on that particular area?
What is its timeline? Where's the bill and the status?
So we're told by Casey, Bonnie can correct me if this is wrong, but Tuesday, February 6th.
Actually, we were
its first
asking,
hearing, so.
we had asked the chambers, the local chambers, to take a position to be added to the fact sheet that we hand to legislators, and also to come down and testify. The bill is up in committee on Thursday.
A little more time.
If you could take a position before Thursday, that would be great.
Okay.
That's why I asked.
Okay.
Scott, will you be sending this?
Yes,
stuff out?
I'll be sending Casey's sheet out, and then I've contacted Representatives Foot and Singer, because it's a House bill, to get their positions on it. So I'd like to send out their positions with my email with Casey's talking points as well. I'll send that out along with a link to the actual bill and a link to the federal Family Leave Act, so we can compare what's already established law. So, but that should come out this afternoon by email.
Well, that said, we're going to go ahead and get to our more important event of the day. So, gentlemen, we'd like to structure today as a forum. We'd like to provide each of you 5 minutes, kind of give an opening statement or opening remarks, in particular about what you feel you would bring to the city council and what you'd like to accomplish if elected to office. After that, we'll open it up to questions and discussion from the committee members and guests, and invite both of you to respond. Ideally, we'd like you maybe not to take too many jabs at each other, and really focus more on what you'd like to accomplish and bring to the community. Mr. Waters, since I think this is your first time here, we'd like to offer you the opportunity to speak first.
Oh, the new guy is here first. First of all, thank you for the invitation. Good morning, members of this esteemed group. Tim Waters. I've lived in Longmont since 1994. My wife and I moved to Longmont after having spent 8 years in Greeley, 7 of those as superintendent of that school district. And so in that role, I was on your side of this conversation as a member of the Greeley Area Chamber of Commerce. My time in Greeley wrapped up 23 years in the field as a practitioner in the field of education. I spent the next 21 years as a president and chief executive officer of a nonprofit education research and development company. We were headquartered in the Tech Center. So I commuted for 21 years from Longmont to the Tech Center. Much of the time I was on an airplane, so I didn't have to make that drive every day. But I spent much of my first 21 years in this community on an airplane, headed someplace, trying to make a difference in the quality of education practice somewhere in the world. When I turned the page after my second granddaughter was born and decided I was going to come home and spend more time in Longmont, I have been looking since then for opportunities to kind of move the ball to contribute in the interest of the community. I've done that in a variety of ways. About a year ago, I started attending council meetings. I was particularly interested in what the council was doing with the Windy Gap and the Chimney Hollows question or issue, which got my attention, and the more I attended, the more interested I got. And when the opportunity opened up, when Brian was elected mayor, the chance to run for the Ward 1 seat, I decided to throw my hat in the ring. Here's what you get if I'm elected to this council. You will get somebody who's going to be clear on his positions on the issues. So clarity is one thing you would get. I tried to be clear on my, where I stand on issues that I think of relevance and importance to the city since day one. That said, you'll also get transparency. No one survives in this world being rigid or unwilling to listen and learn as you go along. So you'll get not only clarity, but you'll get some transparency about where I am, how I've contributed to decisions in either as a member of the council or in anything else that I'm going to be doing in this community. Third, you get accountability. I've lived my whole life in spaces where it's required to be clear on what we're trying to accomplish as an organization, whether I was running a business or running a tax-supported institution. And I do think, my view, that this community, it's a wonderful community. It's a great place to live, and we're only going to keep getting better if we're clear on what we're trying to accomplish. We're clear on what our ends are, what our strategies are, that we execute well on what those strategies are, that we're clear on performance targets, and we're going to collect data and measure our progress, just like any of you would do if you're going to run successful businesses. I don't think we have enough of that on the council and in the community. And lastly, you would get a fair amount of leadership. I've been in leadership, I've been a CEO for 28 years of my career. I've been in leadership roles virtually my entire adult life. And I'm willing to follow strong leadership that is worthy of following. I've also stepped in the breach and led when needed. So you would get clarity, transparency, accountability, and leadership if I'm elected to the council. There's some materials on the table back there. My position on issues is attached to those materials. You can find that on my website as well, and I'm happy to respond to your questions today.
Thank you very much.
Well, hi, gang.
Hey, Josh.
A lot of us have sat in this room for a long time. We have a big decision to make next week. Our ballots land Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, and the box you check is going to impact our town for a long time, generations to come. Well, I'm Josh. I'm one of our town's biggest advocates, one of our biggest cheerleaders, and I'm fiercely loyal to this town that we all love. I've been committing to giving back and elevating this town for over a decade. What we'll learn today is, for those of you who don't know already, I'm not a politician tied to a specific party or a specific issue. I'm just pro-Longmont, and I look forward to working with you on the issues before us. At home, I'm a dad. I've got the two most beautiful twin girls, Lilia and Madeline. They're 3 and they're the best. I'm married to Wendy, the love of my life. She's a veterinarian here in town, and I hope you never have to meet her, because if you go to her hospital, it means your dog or cat's really sick. Professionally, I've been the community organizer at Left Hand Brewing Company now for the better part of 10 years. Building large-scale community building events that have raised the better part of $1 million for charities right here in this town. Think of a charity that you care about. Think of it in your head right now. The hard work that I've put in and leading our team of volunteers and rallying the community has probably sent dollars right to that organization that you're thinking about. Beyond the events, I have some real-world governance experience. Shortly after arriving and jumping aboard the left-hand train, I participated in Leadership Longmont. Raise your hand if you've participated in Leadership Longmont. It's really cool, and I would encourage anyone to participate in Leadership Longmont if you haven't. It's a great opportunity to understand how the town works. As a result of being inspired and getting to know how the town works, I jumped aboard the local Visitors Bureau board for a term. That's Visit Longmont, but at the time it was called LAVA, for those who remember. I've been part of this committee for 8 or so years, working here alongside Scott and some of the most engaged members of our town. I've been on the board of the chamber now for 5 years, and then I've been on planning and zoning for 6 years. I did the math this morning. I think I put in a little over 200 hours sitting in these chairs. I think we're going to get a new paint job here soon. Is that right, Scott?
That's correct.
Maybe the chair is a little more comfortable. But I worked alongside you making changes in our town. I've learned a lot from each of you. I look around and I see folks that I've learned from. I've learned first, this isn't about me. This is about Longmont. I take great pride in taking off the me hat and putting on the Longmont hat, whether when I'm walking in here or even more importantly when I walk into the chamber quarters. I've been doing that on planning and zoning. Second, I respect that I'm not the expert on most issues. I look around, I have asked most of you for guidance and perspective and ideas and solutions. I've even challenged some of you on your perspectives and your ideas and your issues, and together we have worked to find common ground. Third, I'm committed to making sure everyone is heard. I have a little leather-bound book here that I take to planning and zoning every month, and I've written down the name of almost every member of public invited to be heard. And when I reveal my decision, I reference almost every one of their names. What it was that their issue was, the challenge that they had or the concern they had, and I'm sure to acknowledge that and address it while I'm making my decision. And this is about being heard, and it's critical to do that, especially when you're about to decide against their interest. And I can pull up every name if you want. I have a reputation for being a consensus builder, and some of that reputation starts right here in this room. Finding common ground when the pressure is on, we've certainly had heated debates right here. And this is critical as our council becomes increasingly polarized. Did any of you catch council on Tuesday? It was hot. And I think what we need on that council right now is a little bit of balance and someone who can pull out the wonderful perspectives from each of the council members and help us move forward. The bottom line is that my hands-on experience in Longmont governance makes me uniquely qualified for this position on council. Issues, we have a lot of issues. The number one issue, actually, in my mind, is protecting our quality of life. Balancing our strong economic positioning while maintaining our small town feel is going to be hard, and I look forward to doing that with you. And everything else kind of falls under that. Affordable housing, Windy Gap, oil and gas, transportation, all of these really impact our quality of life and us protecting the Longmont story. So I'd say let's just jump into the issues and hear what you want to talk about. Let's roll.
We'll open it up to the members of the committee and guests who would like to ask a question or pick the brains of our candidates.
Dan, I'm going to ask one question right off the bat. Aren't there 3 people running for this position?
There are. Scott?
Yes, there are, and Russ Lyman was invited, but due to work conflicts, was not able to attend.
Okay.
So we did invite him.
Okay.
So, yeah, but there are 3 people.
I want to make sure somebody didn't drop out or something like that.
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Did you have an additional question?
Nope. That's it right now.
There's coffee in the bag if you need.
I would like to ask your positions on inclusionary zoning. That has come up again. At the chamber, we've talked about it for many years over time about different things, and I would just like to know your positions on that since it seems to be coming up again. Thank you.
Who should go first?
I'll offer it to you since you went second.
Stacy, if you know the solution for our affordable housing crisis or affordable housing gap, then I'm ready to hear it. But I think the solution to affordable housing and as we approach inclusionary zoning is going to require a bunch of different tools. First, we have a great problem. And that great problem is that Longmont has become a very desirable place to live. In fact, I think it's changed during my tenure here. I've been in Longmont for 11 years. And when I came here, we were Longtucky or Wrongmont. And now we couldn't be the cooler place to stay. And so as a result, it's becoming more and more expensive to live here. And housing, as a result, is becoming more and more unattainable for those that need to work and serve and be a part of this community. I think that inclusionary zoning is in our future. I don't think it's good for business. I don't think it works in the interest of most of the members of this room. But based on Tuesday's discussion, it seems like it's coming down the pipeline. So I think what we have to discuss is to what degree does it impact our town. There's some real weaknesses to inclusionary zoning. I like the idea of mandating a set amount of deed-restricted units, but we have to recognize a few things. One, if we implement inclusionary zoning, Yes, we're going to get 10 or 12 or maybe even 15% of those units allocated to affordable housing, but that's going to make the other 85, 88, or 90% of those units more expensive for the rest of the folks trying to buy those market rate homes. And that's going to have an impact on maybe some people in this room and maybe your kids or grandkids. So recognizing that the developer will spread their loss on those units among the rest, and that will impact everyone else. I think that we have to recognize that if the market crashes, or takes a downturn, then folks get stuck in their affordable housing units, and it becomes very challenging for folks to get out. Was that?
Oh, I'm sorry. It doesn't even have to crash. It
Okay.
just needs to go down.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So if the market takes a fall, that makes folks can get stuck, and it makes it hard to sell those homes. I think if inclusionary zoning is coming down the pipeline, I think we need to make sure there's a buyout option, a pay in lieu option. And this affordable housing fund, which we have now, has the better part of $1 million in it. I think developers should have the opportunity to pay into that and make sure the city is allocating those dollars towards affordable units elsewhere. I think we can be a little bit more creative. I'm bummed. The reports came out on Tuesday that the incentives offered to the developers to build affordable housing, rather than mandating, but instead incentivizing, hasn't yielded the amount of units we wanted. In fact, according to the city staff, we've seen 0 units developed from the incentives that were implemented. Now, the city, I work on planning and zoning, and we evaluate the comp plan and code, and we've seen, we've implemented more favorable regulations for developers. So if you're going to build affordable units, you can build taller, pop another story or 2. You can build more dense, maybe reduce your setbacks, build on smaller lots, build more properties on the lot. And I think these were solutions that I was hoping were going to be more impactful. And I'm frustrated that hasn't been more impactful.
Could I input on that
Please,
just
Amy.
a bit? So I keep hearing this. We heard this Tuesday night at City Council, but yet I have not heard anyone address the simple fact that during the downturn from 2009 to current, there were no buildings. There were no subdivisions going in because the banks were not loaning. Construction companies could not build. So I keep hearing that the incentives that were put out back in 2011 have not been utilized. How could they be utilized if no building was taking place? I don't think that a fair enough analogy has been done given that time period when nothing was going on. So immediately the program is being deemed as a failure, yet nothing was happening in order for those builders to take advantage of those incentives.
Thanks, Amy. That's great wisdom, and certainly if and when I'm brought to City Council, these are the kind of situations where I would turn to experts, turn to staff, turn to the folks that I know in town, and request feedback and guidance.
Tim, we'd love to hear from you as well.
Oh, sorry. My last thing is I love tiny homes, and we should explore tiny homes in our town too.
So I don't know if this is a place where Josh and I would differ, but the comment that it's not in your interest for us to have a more effective affordable housing plan, I think is short-sighted. It is in your interest that we have homes available for young families to purchase in Longmont. If this economy and this housing market is such that the only people who can afford a home are either the people sitting in this room or those like us, that there's no option for young families who are going to contribute for 3 decades to this economy, then over the long run, Longmont begins to look more like Boulder and less like a vibrant community. So it seems to me the question, you've asked a question about inclusionary zoning. I think we ought to back up and ask, what's our objective when it comes to affordable housing? And to what degree does inclusionary zoning or any of the other things, the incentives that Josh referred to, which are all, I think, should be on the table. I think we ought to start by turning to the council, whether I'm on it or not. You and this community ought to turn to the council and ask for clarity on what we're trying to accomplish. I want to say good on the council for making a commitment of $1 million to an affordable housing fund. That is a necessary and totally insufficient step in the right direction. I've asked this question, I don't believe, if they have, the numbers vary, I don't believe the council has adopted the Boulder County Affordable Housing Plan, because that target was 12% of affordable stock by 2035. I'm told by one member of the Longmont city staff that the Longmont target is not that, but it's 8%. And then I heard the mayor say it was 10%, and we were at a forum when we heard this. And whether it's 8% or 10% or 12% is not the point. The point is, we ought to be clear on what that is. And by what time. Right now, if it's 10%, it's 10% with no year tied to it. None of you would set an objective for your businesses to say we're going to accomplish X, and we have no idea when we want to get it accomplished by, right? But that's where we are right now with our approach to affordable housing. So I think we ought to be clear on what the target is, by when, and then we ought to establish some understanding of what our baseline is. It's my understanding right now that 4.1% of the available stock on the market right now falls into the category of affordable. If that's the case, we ought to be clear on how good is good enough in 2018. So where are we trying to get to in 2018 and 2019 and 2020? And then we get to the question of how do we do that? To what degree does inclusionary zoning contribute? Do incentives contribute? Do offsets contribute? Frankly, I don't think developers ought to carry the whole burden of covering the cost of affordable housing. I think that's an opportunity the whole community ought to have a chance to contribute to. So there are right now 500 communities, 500 city councils in this country have adopted inclusionary zoning to help with their affordable housing objectives. They don't all do it the same way. Some are better experiments than others. And there's some best practices out there. We don't have to invent this. There are communities that have found the right mix of inclusionary zoning with the expectations from developers, with offsets so developers don't carry that full burden by themselves, incentives so they can make up the balance. And frankly, I think our affordable housing discussions, where they typically right now focus on economically disadvantaged, elderly, and disabled, which are the targets or the audiences for LHA, ought to be the starting place. But we ought to all care whether or not our teachers can live in this community, whether or not policemen and firemen, whether or not your kids can afford a home in this community. My kids can. My son, who's a blue-collar guy, my daughter, who is an all-star teacher at Fall River Elementary School, can't afford a home in Longmont. That bothers me, and it ought to bother us. So the council, there's a time when I think the council should be in a conversation with the school district. The school district has an interest in this. The city has an interest in this in terms of the kind of city employees we'd like to be able to live here. I think we ought to frame this not as just a poor people, old people, disabled people problem. This is a problem that we ought to take a look at as a community, figure out how to own it together, how to share the cost, and make certain that we have opportunities for young families to spend decades in this community contributing to the economy and to the quality of life. Long answer, but we both have long answers.
Thank you both. I'd like to know from both of you, how many developers that you all have talked to see just exactly how your thought process is, and they agree or disagree, and if they do disagree, how? And what did you take away from any of those developers that you talked to?
I have recently met with one developer to have this very conversation. And that conversation was influential in my thinking, sent me to learn more about what other communities are doing with inclusionary zoning and affordable housing, but it also sent me in the direction of saying, okay, so what are we trying to accomplish? And how do we do this together not in opposition to one another. Our developers have an interest in making certain we continue to grow this community. Josh has referenced, and I think he's spot on with those parts of the incentives that allow developers to build more dense, whether that's up or on different footprints. You probably are more familiar than I with the economics of sprawl. And if you're not, there's some really interesting heat maps to look at to see in communities where development, and this is strays just a bit, but I'll try to come back to it, where development that is not where density along business corridors produce economic benefits to the community versus sprawl, where communities can't afford, cities can't afford the cost of maintenance of sewer and streets and whatnot in outlying areas over the long haul if we're not smarter about more dense growth along business corridors. And that's where I think we need to be in partnership with developers to make certain we're making smarter decisions and incentives where we need them to be placed. So our developers grow and benefit along with young families in this community.
Hi, Franny. Thanks for the question. Franny, I've met with several developers in town. Yesterday or earlier this week, I had the privilege of sitting in Stephen Tebow's office for the first time. Kevin Muleshine and his crew, Wendell Pickett. And I'd like to just set the tone with, I have the supporting of the Longmont Association of Realtors, and this speaks to my approach towards development and building and the interests of developers as we look forward. I recognize that that developers are a player in the future of our affordable housing, and they need to be at the table, but I don't think the burden should fall on them. As I said earlier, the solution, the final solution for affordable housing will be multifaceted, and what I have been doing on planning and zoning is doing. We've been accomplishing and imparting affordable housing with a balance for our town over the last 6 years. Excuse me, I'm sorry. We've seen the Copper Peak and Chrisman and Fall River apartments go up. This was good, wise directions, and at the same time, we've been balancing that with high-end and single-family residential and higher-end products throughout as well. I'm sorry, Franny, I lost my train of thought. Anyways, I've met with the players in town. I have their support, and I'd like your support as well.
Thank you.
Monty.
Should the city provide financial incentives to businesses moving to Longmont, and why or why not?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I do think we should provide incentives to businesses. I'll give you an example of a success. I think Smucker's is a success. We have to be cautious. I don't want to give financial incentives, but I think it's a part of helping set Longmont up for our future. For the city worked with Smucker's on incentives, whether it be utility rates, and favorable financial incentives. But I think what we get in exchange for that are good paying jobs, 400 plus good paying jobs right here in our town. And I think it's worthy for us to work with developers, wave the flag that Longmont is open for business, and do what we can to bring in neat, creative businesses, whether it's AstraZeneca or Smucker's, or if it's Rosalie's Pizzeria and High Plains Bank right here in town. So I think I turn to the Longmont Economic Development Partners, Jessica, and our city staff and city council to find incentives that will help bring unique, good, innovative businesses to our town that will employ us and set us up for success.
Yeah, I don't think there's much Josh has said that I would disagree with. I think incentives properly utilized make sense. I'm not close enough to the kinds of decisions or incentives the council authorized for Smuckers, as an example. I would put that in the success column, but I would also add that we need to have a broader vision for the kind of businesses we want to attract, and that's going to require more than incentives. It's going to require workforce development, the kind of talent pool that businesses need to be able to employ who they're going to need to employ. And while Smuckers is an example of a success, and I know they're going to pay $20 an hour, but I don't think there's anybody who's going to make $20 an hour who can afford, back to the affordable housing discussion, who can afford to buy a home in Longmont. So that's a double-edged sword. If we continue to attract businesses where the people who work in them have to live somewhere else, that's where I think we need to take a step back and reflect on where the incentives ought to be utilized for the kind of businesses and then the kind of talent we want to have in town.
Thank you.
Thank you both for being here. I'm going to piggyback your question a little bit. If you think back about, about 5-6 years ago in this room right now, we talked about the expansion of the Longmont Airport, and that was somewhat driven by the incentivization of bringing new businesses into the community. How do you guys feel about that? Bringing that back up on the table.
Yeah, I'm supportive of building out the airport expansion and the remaster plan. We have lost good, unique job opportunities and employers to come to this town because our airport just can't handle a few things. One, the airport is too short and the tarmac is not thick enough to accommodate the executive jets that need to come in and out that bring in some of the most unique and highest jobs that could come here. So what we need to do is lengthen the airport, make it deeper, and then also provide services, basic services there, upgrade the office space, have a restaurant there, and really turn to that airport as the tool that it is for business development. Recognize that it is a serious economic development tool that we just have that's underutilized. So I'm supportive of building out the airport as the remaster plan did. We've discussed that in this conference room, maybe 8 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know that I could add. I would agree. It's no mistake.
Good.
Nice job.
To follow up to that, how would you go about reintroducing that and moving forward? Because it kind of lost traction, and basically nothing ever really occurred, if I remember correctly. What would you do differently this time?
I'd want to frame the opportunity in a way that allows as many residents as possible to see themselves as winners as a result of the development, and build, whether it's called do outreach, build some momentum. There's no mystery, honestly. You know probably better than I. There's no mystery about what the attributes are of an idea or of an innovation that cause people to more likely say yes to it, right? We know what those are. And there's a pretty good science on the decision-making process that people work through to help them get them to yes. We need to bring all we know about motivating people and to support a change initiative or a growth initiative like this. It's not science, it's just applying science. Or it's not a mystery, it's just applying science and doing it systematically and building the frame large enough for people to see themselves as winners. It can't be a one-off kind of deal. It has to be a campaign. And it's the perfect kind of a campaign for a chamber to take on in partnership with others.
Nick, I'm not sure what happened to where the breaks are and why that hasn't continued, but I'd sure like to find out. Some of my finest experiences in Longmont have started and ended at Vance Brand Airport. And for any of you here that have had the opportunity to take off on one of those small planes, it's a treat. I do have the support of some old guys that have some really neat planes, Howard and the guys that meet over there at the hangar next to Dale's. And just yesterday I was in Frank's office over there on high skydiving. So I make that a priority to get back on track, figure out where that funding gap is, and see what we can do to move forward with that and start bringing new, neat, big businesses back to town and not losing them to our neighbors.
Sure.
Within your district, you have a significant anchor store that currently lies empty. What, if anything, would you view as your role on council?
Dan, that was my question. You just stole my question. Just putting that right out. I was writing it down. You just took it.
I don't think anyone cares about the Safeway. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Vote for Tim.
If you want to learn about Safeway, join me every Saturday morning at 8:30 at Teresa's place. We will have 10 or 20 members of the public there, and we talk about all things important to Ward 1, and of course that Safeway is critical. Dan, that's a tricky question. I'm not sure we have all the information available to us to know what's going to happen with that and how to move forward. Here's what a bunch of us really want. A lot of us want a Trader Joe's or a neat natural food grocer in there. But I bet we all read the same story, maybe it was last week. Safeway has this clause that they don't sell to other grocers, and this puts the brakes on that. Now, the last I heard from the paper, and I have the Times calls in the room, maybe they've heard back, but we had put in inquiries to Safeway and to see if they would negotiate with that or if there would be flexibility in that, and at the time we hadn't heard anything. So the first thing I would do is I'd get our mayor, I'd ask Brian Bagley and Jessica from LEDP to jump on the phone with Safeway and say, what do we got to do to make this happen? Come on, you're holding us hostage here. So I'd love to say it's going to be a grocer, but that's going to take a couple steps, and I hope we can get there. If we can't, because as business owners we know that we can only tell the business community, we're not big fans of being told what we can do. So if we can't have a grocer there, then a couple neat ideas have come right out of Teresa's restaurant. Ones I would have never thought of. Well, the obvious one is there's not too many other good sit-down restaurant options in Ward 1, and so how about a nice family restaurant? A young man, a very innovative man, said we should turn it into a manufacturing plant. 3D manufacturing is the way of the future, Josh. This should become a 3D manufacturing plant. We've talked about an adult ed facility, an adult education facility, a church. Could we somehow turn it into an affordable housing space? Obviously there'd be a lot of work there, but we should keep all these options on the table. Several others, but I would look forward to working with, I would turn to the mayor, turn to LEDP, get the answers from Safeway. What are our options here? What can we do to allow them to let us get another grocery store in there, because that King Soopers cannot bear the weight, that's for sure. So I look forward to working with you to figure that out. Yes, Mayor.
I'm going to go back to inclusionary zoning, if you don't mind. Back in 2010, when
could I respond to that question first?
If you may, yeah.
Well,
please do.
I can tell you, my wife would be the first one to vote for a grocery store. A Sprouts would be her preference. I don't know what the constraints are with Safeway in terms of their resistance or their policy on the sale to another grocer. I do know there's at least one constituent who has already corresponded with Sprouts to see what their interest might be. But I would agree that it would be a service to Ward 1 residents to put an option there to King Soopers that would pay attention to what King Soopers was doing that put Safeway out of business, right? They're doing some things right. In terms of other options, personally, the last thing I'd want to do is take it off the tax rolls if we could keep it on the tax rolls. So however it gets resolved, I think the last option ought to be to turn it into something that doesn't contribute to revenues in the community, to the city. All right, sorry.
One second, Mayor. I did want to add one final thought, because I think you're about to take us a different direction, and that is, I wonder if this is a learning opportunity for our town, and I can turn to Bonnie Finley for guidance here, but I wonder if there's an opportunity for us to read the fine print on these agreements with these big anchors in our neighborhoods, and see if there's anything we can do as a city to say, this clause that you have that limits who we can sell to, what can happen with this property afterwards, we can't have that in our town. If you want to set up in Longmont, then we can't have this clause that says no selling, that you limit what this property can become in the future. Now, I'm not a big fan of restricting business, and I certainly don't want to take down the flag that we're open for business, but if this is true, that Safeway will not sell to another grocer, and this gets us in a jam, and if there's anything that we can do on the front end in the future, then I'd love to explore that. Maybe that's a discussion with Eugene May and our legal team, but I'll find out who. I'm sorry, Mayor.
That's okay. In 2010, we addressed the inclusionary zoning ordinances. At that time, it had been over 8 years since there were any apartment complexes that were built in the city of Longmont. We had, and we still do have, the cheapest housing stock in Boulder County. Okay, how much further do we want to go? There were 9 people that were in bankruptcy to try to get out of the program to move on in their lives because of the deed restrictions put on by staff at that time and the city manager. The inclusionary zoning at that time completely stifled any sort of development in housing stock in the community. What makes you think it'll be any different if we bring it back?
I don't think it will be better. I'm not a fan of inclusionary zoning. What I tried to clarify earlier is that I see it in the works. And so I don't think that inclusionary zoning will be our solution. But 4 members of City Council on Tuesday were ready to pull the trigger. And so I just think I see it in the pipeline, and so I want us to be cautious and be prepared. I don't think it's the right thing for us. We have other opportunities with the incentives, with a more creative planning in our comp plan, incorporating our comp plan with tiny homes, with cooperatives and other dynamic options. So I'm not favorable to inclusionary zoning, and I would look forward to meeting with folks like you and Harold and members who've been a part of that story in its finest and in its worst, and find solutions.
I'll add one thing else. Since we did away with that inclusionary zoning, you will notice that there has been, we were like 2,600 apartment complex, apartment units shy, according to staff.
Sure.
And now we have more than that available, which people look at and they say, well, we've got too many apartments going up in the community. We have been minus them for so long.
Sure.
The other thing is that they're saying, well, they're too expensive. The market will bring those down because there'll be so many people vying for those. And I'm telling you that because of the supply, it will bring down the cost of rental units in the community. Why isn't that a solution? By letting the marketplace dictate.
Is that to me?
Sure.
Well, I think the marketplace, or the market will have an influence on the cost of leases. I'm just curious, were there in the 2010 timeframe, did you have any offsets for developers?
Offsets? None.
Well, so there are communities that the success stories with inclusionary zoning have offered offsets to take some of the burden, shift some of the burden from the cost of developers to spread that to other parts of the community. So there might have been some options to have considered then that might have had a different impact on the number of success stories or failures with what was happening with inclusionary zoning in 2010.
To my knowledge, there were no success stories. When you have 9 people that are declaring bankruptcy in order to get out of the program, I don't think that would indicate that there was any success stories in that program at all.
Well,
the other thing
I'll just concede there were none. I'm just, my question is, were there other options considered?
Of course there were, but you had to cut the head of the snake off first before you could deal with it. And that was what we did. And if you'll take a look from that point on, you'll see a tremendous amount of magnificent growth in that area. And so I think, we have to look at what the ramifications of bringing that program back into the city is going to do, considering that we have the cheapest stock in Boulder County. Boulder has the largest. They need something like that because it's unaffordable to live in Boulder. It's still affordable to live in Longmont. It's still affordable to be here. The other thing is, why don't we pass some of these incentives or things to corporations that come along and say, why don't, Smuckers, has it been offered to Smuckers to say, listen, you've got a lot of people coming into the community, would you like to contribute to our affordable housing program? I don't see that that has happened.
It should. Can I respond? That should have been, in my view, I said earlier, I'm not I wasn't part of those conversations with Smuckers and what the incentives were. That should have been part of the conversation. And I think it should be, even if we're offering incentives to bring new business to town, part of that conversation ought to be what are they willing to invest to help with affordable housing. And I think there are other revenue options we ought to at least talk about and potentially put in front of the community to support. Not that the city council would impose more taxes, but if we cared enough as a community about affordable housing, to spread that beyond just inclusionary zoning so that teachers and others could participate. Well, you shake your head no, I'd be willing at least to listen to the community.
Is somebody comes in an entry-level job, are they supposed to be guaranteed to own a home?
No. And I'm not,
that's what you're really saying there, Tim.
No, that's not at all what I'm saying. The people are guaranteed to own a home. But the University of Colorado has a down payment assistance program for their faculty members.
Don't we still have that at the city, a down payment assistance program and a rental assistance program? We already have these things in place, Tim. The city does. Well, we also contribute to Habitat for Humanity. Isn't that more of an affordable housing program? It seems like it was to me. So we have 3 programs that are already available in the city of Longmont, and now we're going to go to inclusionary zoning. I don't think that the people on the council, nor do I think you understand the ramifications of what that can do to the market in our community.
Well, I may not.
It's a shame.
Can I tag on what Brian's saying, just relevant to our Safeway? We're seeing these apartment complexes going up on Pace. Now they're talking about more going up on County Road 1 and 17. Does inclusionary zoning, I don't know, does it include support for those people that are going to be, does it include a grocery store?
No.
No.
Now,
That's
Holly
not what
Christensen,
inclusionary zoning.
No, that's not what it's all about.
but shouldn't it?
No.
No, but if no, I know, but I mean, in the idea of we're going to put these big pockets of people in locations, don't we need to consider where are they going to shop? Where are they going to get their gas?
I'm sorry. That's part of the Envision Longmont plan that is actually a phenomenal plan that was put together. I think we've all been able to view it, but yet it's been pushed aside by the current council. So if you have the opportunity to see, not all of them.
Wait a minute.
Yeah,
Sorry. Majority of the
if you have the opportunity to go onto the city site and view the Envision Longmont plan, it includes exactly what it is that you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal plan.
Does it include getting another grocery store?
It doesn't
It
say
includes
specifically,
asking.
but it's working on it.
It's got those areas.
It's got a look like it.
I'm not like that. Awesome.
What are your thoughts on transportation? And the reason I ask this is I think that, in my mind, it's an issue that transportation and specifically traffic is it's the knee-jerk reaction, it's the devil that prompts a lot of people to be down on business and down on development. I'd just like to know what are your thoughts in general about transportation and where do we go from where we're at and all those things.
Yeah, Monty, that's a big problem we have. As we continue to grow, as we become more desirable, and as projects continue to grow, we need to make sure we have that infrastructure in place. Our major arterials, especially on the east side, County Line, Pace, heading and Main Street, east and west with 9th and Mountain View and Longs Peak. Just getting around town is becoming more and more difficult, and transportation is a big priority. On Planning and Zoning Commission, we review, while we review and edit and are implementing the Envision Longmont plan, we also review the multimodal transportation plan. And this is kind of our future. This is the comp plan for transportation. This is how are we integrating not just roads, but also bike trails and also pedestrian trails, and how are we making this town connected? And so addressing weak points in transportation, addressing pinch points along Main Street and around town is a big part of what we're looking at right now. So I look forward to seeing and working with the build out of the multimodal transportation plan and addressing some of these concerns. We have a few tools in place. Free RTD ride is helping a lot of folks get around And maybe it's not quite as fast, and it's not quite as fast or doesn't come as frequent as we want, but we got free transportation that folks are using to go to the grocery store, go to the senior center, and get around town, and I applaud that, and I look to continue that. When we talk about transportation outside of Longmont, we're talking about fast tracks and bus rapid transit down to Boulder. And I think we all know, I think in my very first planning and zoning PPC meeting here, we talked about fast tracks, and it's been the better part of 10 years now. None of us like where we're at with that. We've been paying a lot of money into fast tracks, and we don't have a whole lot to show for it. So holding RTD accountable, doing our best to get rail here, and if not, what's happening in the meantime. These are things that we'll address as council and sit in these rooms and make the decisions on how best to move forward, Monty.
Yeah, I think to the degree that I understand the problem and some of its causes, as I look at projects that are approved in the process that is used to approve projects, I do wonder, and I have wondered with city staff, about the dynamic of the traffic studies and who does the traffic studies and what the conclusions of traffic studies are and how they're used, both as in developers in making their presentations and in P&Z as they review those and make those decisions. I've scratched my head on a couple of projects where it looks like the dynamic is this: the developer has the traffic engineer do the study. I don't think I can find a traffic or a proposal that's ever been denied based on a traffic study. Not surprising if the developer is going to pay the. Now they're reviewed by the city planning staff. I get that, and I'm not questioning the competency of the city planning staff in reviewing those traffic studies. But it would be interesting to me on just if we just to test the process of the city retaining the traffic engineer to do the traffic study, charged to the developer. They would pay for that anyway, but working for the city as opposed to the developer, and see if that got us to any different kinds of recommendations in terms of what has to be done with infrastructure as development's occurring to take some of the pressure off of traffic. And I could give you specific examples. I won't, you're probably aware of them, I won't go into that. But the net effect is, just in terms of in town, we have 7 intersections in Longmont right now that are rated by the Department of Transportation as non-functional. We will have 9 more intersections. If we stay the course that we're on right now, we'll have 9 more intersections, 16 intersections in Longmont that'll be rated non-functional in the next decade or so. So the problem's not getting better. It's getting worse if we don't do something different than we're doing right now. And I think part of that starts with how the process leads to decisions about proceeding or not, or the time frame with particular developments. I'm on the same page as Josh with concerns about east-west, north-south corridors in Ward 1 and across the city. I do know there's a project, County Line Ward 1 will get some attention this year. There's a 256-unit apartment complex going to go in at 17th and County Line Road 1. There's going to be a turn lane. It's not going to be widened. There'll be some bike lanes. It's going to be a turn lane. There'll be some improvements, which is good on County Line Road 1. But 17th and Pace, if you live and you're using Pace as your north-south corridor with the new apartment complex at Mountain View, is not going to get any easier. And those in 17th, in Pace, and 9th are not anywhere right now in the 5-year capital improvement plan. Those, and then on the west side, what we're seeing on Hover is very disconcerting, especially as the council is considering annexing additional acreage, another 83 acres that would add 7,000 trips a day to Hover without clarity on exactly when this is going to get mitigated. So those are real concerns. With respect to RTD, I'm taking the same position that we ought to hold RTD accountable for delivering on what we said we were going to get, or what they said we were going to get. We've put $45 million of sales tax money into the RTD project, and we have not gotten much in return. the money, if the money's not there, I'm not certain, when we're gonna see fast tracks reach Longmont, but we gotta keep the pressure on. Here's the other thing, though, I think we ought to do. At the end of the day, if we can turn a disadvantage, maybe lemons into lemonade, or turn a disadvantage into an advantage, we need a council working with RTD representation that has a really clear vision on what we'd like to see at some point, assuming that it may not be commuter rail. There are options. I'm not certain we even understand what the options might be. If we're not going to get fast tracks commuter rail until 2040, we ought to take a step back and say, well, what are the better alternatives than commuter rail in 2040? It may very well be that monorail or autonomous cars and things that we haven't even considered as part of fast tracks are better options than what we thought we were going to get with the original vote in 2004.
Can I just do a real quick follow-up?
Yep.
For clarity, kind of based on some of the things said. Should the city decline development based on traffic or traffic studies?
To me?
Well, both of you, really.
No, but I do. But this is an area where I'm going to have way more to learn. I think there ought to be some examination of the approach to funding response to a traffic study that says we're going to have a problem for the foreseeable future, and we don't know when we're going to get it fixed. Because the fix doesn't come until we've accumulated enough developer fees and other resources to have the budget to fix the road. So I would be the first to admit that I have way more to learn about what those mechanisms are. But I do think that we need a smarter approach. We need to consider some alternatives to accelerating infrastructure that needs to be developed to support the development decisions that are being made.
Have either one of you read Longmont's transportation plan?
We review it every day. We address it on planning and zoning, Ms. Finley, every month.
Yeah, I'm a neophyte when it comes to the transportation plan.
Monty, let me jump on your question. Thank you for asking. I think we need to clarify a couple things. First of all, when a project comes before planning and zoning, first we have to recognize that we have a landowner, a property owner, or a developer that has owned this land and property for some amount of time. And what we're probably not going to do is say, you can't build this. In fact, we use a set of review criteria for every single issue that comes before us. And we have to point to that review criteria to make our decision. And so if a project does not fit within the review criteria, then we enter the opportunity to consider whether to deny the project, approve it with conditions, or if it's not meeting the criteria, you're not going to grant it, otherwise. So every project that has come before P&Z, we have to uphold, like we're in a court of law. We have to look at the evidence presented to us, look at the review criteria that we can use to make our decisions, and traffic is definitely one of those review criteria. And if the traffic studies, the analytics, the data prove that this is not going to have the negative impact on the neighborhood that maybe others might think, then we can't deny it just because we think so. Now, Tim brings up a provocative idea. Right now, the traffic studies are provided, or the burden is put on the applicant to pay for and arrange, and then city staff, a collection of engineers, folks with their engineer certificate, review that. Tyler Stamey happens to be our traffic engineer, and Tyler reviews it and he gives a thumbs up, this is a kosher study, or a thumbs down, this isn't. And so whether we could change that, we could say, hey developer, you don't buy the study and our guys validate it, let's just pay the city to do it. But I spoke to Joni Marsh, the planning and zoning, the development services director, and she said, I think my guy Tyler does a good job reviewing these, and the way we're doing it is functional, and we get that third-party analysis. So the my real life experience on P&Z just demonstrates that there's going to be projects before us. Whether you like them or not, we have to stand by those review criteria. Some of the hardest decisions you make is when you have a room full of folks who are fearful about the impact of traffic or not sure about the impact of this project. But when all the data says, this is okay, this fits our town, so one of the hardest decisions is to look out into that room and defend why you have to move forward and do that confidently. And so this is real life, and it's something that I'm proud to have been a part of. Now, another quality that I have that helps make these decisions better and easier is I have relationships with every member, with many members on city staff. So when I heard about this concern, Tim mentioned in a meeting with a bunch of bike-friendly folks that County Line Road 1 wasn't going to be rebuilt. It wasn't going to be improved anytime soon. And I thought, well, gosh darn it, I thought we had just discussed that at the last P&Z meeting that there was going to be, that County Line Road 1 was going to be rebuilt. And I went right to the guy who has the spreadsheet. His name's Dale. I'm sorry, his name's Nick Wolfram. Hey, Nick, man, how come my opponent here is telling me that I'm wrong? I thought County Line Road 1 is going to be widened and made more, be able to accommodate more. In fact, I think that was part of the deal for approving the project on 17th and County Line. He said, sure, Josh. He pulls out, hold on, let me pull out my spreadsheet, blah, 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 blah. And he prints out this report for me that says that by the end of 2018, County Line Road 1 between right around 9th and up to about 17th will be upgraded. 3 lanes, bike lanes on each side, and then that turn lane into Shadowgrass, a 3-way turn into Shadowgrass. And I said, well, shoot, that's what I thought. So when you bring me on board, I want you to know that I have access, I have connections, I have a network of folks that have the right answers, that have the solutions, and I convene with them regularly to figure out what's best for our town.
Can I offer just, not even, maybe it's a rebuttal, I don't know. But you asked about how development contributes to traffic congestion. And if the criteria that we're currently using, upon which decisions are made consistently, are contributing to the problem, then it would seem to me at some point in time, somebody takes a step back and asks themselves whether or not it's the right criteria. Because to do otherwise, if you're not happy with what you're getting in terms of traffic congestion, you could expect to continue getting traffic congestion. An alternative is to take a step back and look at other procedures or other criteria, and you might get a different result. But doing the same thing and expecting better results, all we know is the definition of insanity. So if you're not happy with traffic congestion, you're going to want to take a second look at some of the criteria that's being used. And I'm certain it's being used well and being used ethically and consistently. I'm not questioning that. But I do think then you have to examine the criteria upon which you're making those decisions.
And then just for the record, I'm just one of the rare and weird people that don't care a lot about traffic. So I'm really
good question.
I'd rather have a vibrant, economy.
Sir, if you'd both ask your question and introduce yourself.
What's that?
If you'd introduce yourself and
Sure.
ask your
My name is
question.
John Coe. I live on West 3rd Avenue. And I was thinking that one of the problems is that we're dealing with 2 different counties. And, we have Weld County, we have Boulder County. And one of the ideas that came up a long time ago was to have like St. Vrain County. So we're basically centered inside of an area and not just on the edge where we're trying to deal with Weld County, we're trying to deal with Boulder County. On West 3rd Avenue, my neighbor is actually in the county, which is kind of odd. I actually have 2 neighbors that are in the county, and I'm in the city. And years ago, when there were issues, you just don't get help. So what do you think of having a St. Vrain County? I know that's been brought up before. I think we'd lose property value because you wouldn't have Boulder County on your title, but I'm good with that. I would lose 10% to have actual good government in this area that doesn't have call somebody else. And recently I've come across issues where the city police talk, they send you to the county sends you to the city, even on very simple issues. And that's got to change. And I just want, but the simple question is, what if we had a county here that represented the school district area, and then we had unified government, we had, even the fire department is completely somewhat isolated from our city response. Just your thoughts on that.
Tim?
Well, I haven't thought much about that. My first reaction is to imagine what the cost would be for creating a new county government.
But we're in Broomfield.
Well, to the degree that one's willing to consider the cost of creating another county structure, commissioners and all the costs that go with that, that I wouldn't be inclined to go there. So.
John, this is my first time hearing this come up, and I don't know how to answer it because I just don't know enough about it. What we are seeing is the city of Longmont is slowly annexing in kind of islands and properties along the perimeter, and these kind of little islands within our town, and that's helping us become a more cohesive and functional city. But I don't know enough about what it would take to make a new county, and I'd have to sit down with you and a bunch of other folks who knew more than me and work towards seeing if that's a viable option.
But the standard, I'm not jumping in here, but the standard answer is, these are going to be forced within 3 years, but they don't force annexation, and annexation is a big issue, and that issue would pretty much go away, and then we'd have a similar government, and we would get rid of, basically there's like forestry here and forestry there and stuff like that, and unifying that certainly would make some sense, but it would be a long process.
It's a good question. Thanks for asking.
I'd like to raise an individual question for each of you, so it's different based on who you are and what you've said so far. Tim, what I'd like to ask you is, I haven't, and you can correct me if I've just missed it, but I haven't heard any involvement in city committees or organizations, planning and zoning, that sort of thing. How would you look to overcome that lack of direct experience in the city infrastructure? And Josh, what I'd ask from you, as somebody who is involved in those things and who's talked a lot about improving quality of life and made a lot of what I'd call positive general statements, what, if elected, would be one thing that we could, at the end of your first term, be able to hold you accountable for? This got accomplished or this did not get accomplished?
All right, so you're right, I haven't served on a lot of city committees. I was recently appointed to the Longmont Housing Authority, so I've attended one board meeting. But I'm learning a lot about affordable housing, at least in the context of LHA. I'm not a neophyte when it comes to governance. I served for 8 years on the Colorado Commission on Higher Education. I've served on chamber boards. I've served on commissions and councils at federal, state, and local levels. Clearly, for me, it would be a matter of focusing specifically on what we're doing here with our committee and council structure, and benefiting from the wisdom and experience of other council members and city staff. I'm a reasonably fast learner. I'm confident I would learn what I need to move forward.
All right.
Would you ask your question just one more time?
What, if elected, would you hold up as what is the one thing you would tell us, during my term, this is the thing I absolutely want to get accomplished, and that by the end of your first term, we could hold up and say, Josh got this done, or Josh did not get this done?
A more functional city council. Tuesday was a scary day for me. As someone who has served on P&Z and had what I consider a very functional board, respects members of the public, respects staff, respects experts, recognizes when it's time to turn to a consultant or an expert, has rich discussion, respectful discussion, and then moves forward in a pro-Longmont direction. That's my experience. Well, City and Council Chambers on Tuesday rocked my boat. I was genuinely offended at the blatant disregard for staff experience, blatant disregard for consultants and experts. I heard a recommendation to use a survey that wasn't surveying the topic. One was, I just couldn't believe it. I saw council members bickering at each other and verbally say, I can fight all night. And I was scared. I was scared about the future of our town and maintaining all of these qualities that we're trying to protect, quality of life. We can uphold our attitudes on transportation or affordable housing or inclusionary zoning. We can do that if we have a functional council that can work together to make decisions. We've had some times in the past where it was evident that council really struggled. There's been some contentious councils in our days. I can look at folks sitting in the audience who have experienced that firsthand. And what we need is the ability to turn our wise, smart, thoughtful council members into a functional team that is really moving to help Longmont elevate and grow into the future. And that will be my job. My job will be to jump aboard there and help create a functional, effective, valuable council that isn't stuck.
Well, we'd like to give both of you a couple minutes to make some closing remarks. Tim, since you went first on the opening remarks, we'll open it up to Josh to close and then pass it off to you for the final word.
First, I want to apologize for my brain fart earlier. Sometimes when you're sitting in front of a room full of people you admire a lot, you got a lot of ideas going in your head. I want to turn to you as brothers and sisters on this journey towards making our town great. Together we have served and we have brought forth some of the biggest challenges that council before us have worked on. We've made recommendations, we've disagreed, and on occasion we've agreed to. It's been truly one of the privileges of my life to serve, whether in this room, whether at council chambers, or when I'm hosting a little gathering called Pints and Politics back over at the brewery. I've just loved being a part of the Longmont story. I'm not in it for me, I'm in it to help make this town great. I look forward to having your support. I look forward to coming back, having our discussions, and growing from each other and elevating this town. So I'm your friend. Most of you have my cell phone number in your phone, and I encourage us to take this journey together and elevate this town. Thank you. And vote. Regardless of who you vote for, vote.
So I'll start there. Ditto in terms of participating in this election. So thank you for the invitation to be here this morning and for your time this morning and the opportunity to hear your questions and interact. I'll go back to where I started. With me, you know what you get in terms of somebody bringing a fair amount of experience in leadership roles, not on committees and councils in Longmont, but in various, both in the state and in the country. I have no agenda here other than to try to move the ball forward and contribute to the future of this community. Like Josh, and I'm certain Russ, the third candidate, everybody loves this community. We wouldn't be doing this otherwise. And wanting to find ways to leave some impression with some hope and prospects for the future. That's what really my life has been about. Maybe it's a difference between the two of us, maybe not. As much as I admire and love this community, as I said earlier, I think we're either going to be getting better or getting worse. I believed that when I was running a company. I believed that when I was running a school district. And there is no status quo that's viable over the long run. And if we're going to continue to get better as a community, then I think we need clarity. I think we need transparency, and I think we need more accountability. We need to keep pushing ourselves to new levels, and we need to. Cities are the greatest experiment in democracy. A chance to experiment with what works, test it, learn from it, and keep moving forward. And that's what I'd like to be part of. So I'd look for the support from this group and others in the community. And whether I win this campaign or not, I'm not going away. I'm looking forward to service on LHA or other parts of other places in the community. Thank you.
Thank you both for being here with us. Thank you, committee members and guests.